Recording in progress.
All right. Welcome everybody to the Nib and Ink Fest, and specifically this panel, Making of a Webcomic. And also you just switched your screen right then, so do be aware that it'll show your Discord. But um just as a reminder for attendees, you can turn on captions at the bottom of the Zoom screen so you can read along as you listen. Um, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists. Originally from Hawaii, Kody is a Seattle-based genderqueer cartoonist. He likes to focus on queer narratives and subcultures that have historically been hostile to such experiences, like in pro wrestling and punk scenes. When not working on his long-form webcomic, Keeping Time, Kody can be found singing songs to their cats about how stinky they are. Lies Within is created by Lacey, a lifelong vampire fan from a small town in Canada, best known for a UFO crash in the 60s. Lies Within is her first webcomic and draws inspiration from sources such as The Vampire Chronicles, Being Human, and the general vibe of early thousands supernatural TV shows. She can be found most places on the internet at by Lacey. Bob is a Chicago area cartoonist, prose author, illustrator, and creator of the webcomics Into the Smoke and Demon of the Underground. Bob specializes in plot and character-driven adult supernatural fantasy with a focus on LGBTQ plus casts and gay romantic themes. Their debut young adult trans horror graphic novel, The Ghost Key, is coming soon from Holiday House. They also have a passion for Canada geese, who make frequent appearances in their humor mini comics. Nero is a Seattle-based indigenous Panamanian Guna and Mexican Oaxaca cartoonist with 10 plus years in the erotic, web and print comic scene. His comics use the framework of gratification, sexual, and psychosexual to tell stories about gay men's lives. They tread the line of known and unknown horrors, often encouraging the reader to draw their own parallels between fear and arousal. They also prominently feature discussions around BDSM, hedonism, and the frightening world of the food industry. His fiction and nonfiction work has been published by Slipshine, Filthy Figments, Iron Circus Comics, Fortuna Media, The Nib, Real Change, and more.
Oh, so many accolades, Nero, or so many publications.
I forgot mine was so long. I'm so sorry.
You're good. Well, as you can see, folks, this is going to be a super professional, super serious panel. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is Making of a Webcomic with me and my pals. We are going to just be talking about the different processes that we use as we make our individual webcomics, and it's going to be really fun to compare and contrast like the different approaches that we all take. We're super stoked that you're here, and so I will just dive into it, and bear with me because PowerPoint graphic design is my passion.
Sense.
Yeah, so the different things that we will be going over are the different stages, like I mentioned. So that's everything from scripting to lettering and everything in between, pencils, inks, all of that. We're also going to talk a little bit about how each of us post our comics online. And at the very end of the panel, there will be some time for a Q&A with you folks here in the Zoom. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel and you're like, darn, I want to ask a question, hop on over to the NIF website. That's nif.cartoonist.coop, and then you can grab the Zoom link from there. Because we were only going to be soliciting questions from the Zoom room. Yeah? Yeah. All right. So I will talk a little bit about the comic that I make first. So I'm making oh, I just saw that someone is saying, is it really quiet? Am I really quiet? Is it me that's quiet?
Are we all quiet?
I think
You all sound pretty good, so you might want to pump up that volume a little bit just to be sure.
Yeah. Oh, Jay is saying I'm quiet. I can like lean closer to my mic. I think that is my only option. But yeah, all right. Hopefully this is a little bit better. I'm like a little bit closer now. I won't lean back in my chair. If you see me starting to lean back, just remind me. Hunch, shrimp forward.
shrimp.
So anyway,
don't need to be reminded to sure.
right. I make Keeping Time. I will drop that link there. I affectionately call it a queer bummer of a romance. It's set in the 2000s. It's about a romance between bandmates. Who Fall in Love, for better or worse. I launched it in April of last year, so it's now in its second year. It's free to read. We update Tuesdays. It's just my passion project, and I'm super stoked that I'm able to make it. And now I'm gonna toss it over to Bob.
Oh, hi, I'm Bob. I make the webcomic Into the Smoke. It's about a disaster game medium who binds himself to an angry spirit to help solve his murder. And meanwhile, he's kind of pining for his priest exorcist friend because that's what you do. And let's just hope that his priest exorcist friend doesn't have a problem with the fact that he's bound himself to an evil spirit. It turns 1 year old on May 29th, so that's just a couple weeks away, and I still haven't figured out what I'm going to do about that, but it's going to be something really good. So just take my word for it. Let's see. So dropped the URL in the chat, and here are a couple of panels from, this is chapter 1, episode 11. There's some ghost kissing in this one, so go check it out after the panel. Yep, that's it. And so we can move on.
Yeah, next up is Lacey.
So speaking of gay disaster men bound to spooky spirits, Lies Within is a story about a guy who really can't get his act together. He's living with his sister. He can't really keep a job down. And then one night, a strange man attacks him in his house, and his boy next door, friends with benefits buddy, comes and saves him. He finds out that guy's a vampire. He finds out there's this whole secret underground group of people policing the supernatural world, keeping them from the rest of the world. And he sort of has to deal with all of that. And yeah, it's fun. It's currently on hiatus and has been for a few months now while I'm working on something in the background. And I'm really excited to get back into it. Yeah, it's at lieswithincomic.com. It's got over 350 pages you can read now for free. So yeah.
So many pages.
So many pages. I do Ultraviolence, which is a classical toxic yaoi nightmare. It's about one man, Sergio, who has terrible nightmares, who pretty much can only relieve these by fighting in underground blood sports events that are that he's introduced to by a billionaire fail son named Arnaldo. Lots of body horror, lots of well, I mean, gay things happen. This is an all ages panel, right? I had to stop myself there. Updates Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's also about 2 years old.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Happy 2-year anniversary, UV.
Yeah. These are from pages of him replacing his cybernetic legs. People like these ones, so these are the ones I show off.
They are the most
They're very
gorgeous
cool.
of the pages. Yeah.
I go into how these were inked later, so.
Ooh, a little preview. So that leads us sort of nicely, not the best segue we've ever done, but that leaves us into the first stage of the comic creation process, which is story drafting and scripting. I wanted to ask you folks here on the panel which of these writing style alignments you are. I think I have an idea of which I think you are, but I'd love to hear what you think. I'll go first. I think I am the lawful planster, which is I know the ending of my webcomic and I'm working towards it, but I'm also sort of flying by the seat of my pants.
I think I am too. I might be a true planter. When I do prose, I just approach it very differently. I do a lot more planting, but when I do comics, I do verge more into the very rigid, probably lawful plotter, but I still change things on the fly and I don't script everything. So, I'm kind of a mix, I'd say.
That's interesting. I'll let chat decide if they think that they agree with what you are once they see your slides, Bob.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely the chaotic plotter. Maybe
Yeah.
a little bit of a planter in there, but oh my gosh, you should see my notes app on my phone.
Yeah, I'm also a bit of I'm a kind of in the chaotic plotter, true planter,
Yeah.
kind of that little corner in between. That's where I sit.
I think having seen your slides, I totally agree. So I'll go first. In the way I do my scripting is I do it all in an app called Scrivener. I've literally never heard it said out loud before, so bear with me. I'll drop that link there. It's like I don't know, I just graduated from Google Docs, and Scrivener is nice because you can choose like templates, like screenwriting templates basically. So I'm using a comic one that does basically like fancy autocomplete. It knows when you're trying to type in a character's name. It lets you fill in an aside. It knows when you're trying to type in a panel, which those precious seconds that I'm saving, I need them for sitting at my desk being stuck thinking about what I'm gonna write. And I did want to mention that one of the things I really like about Scrivener is that it has this thing called corkboard view, which is in the top right corner of this slide, where you can attach an image to every page. So I take advantage of that by attaching my thumbnails there, so that even when I'm working in my scripting phase, I can have that visual overview of like what is happening, what I'm doing. And it also lets me color code, which is very important because I'm managing basically 3 different timelines, and color coordinating them helps me keep track. And I also use an app called Aeon Timeline, which let me grab that real fast. Because like I said, since I'm working with multiple timelines like a normal person writing a story, it does help me just keep track of everything. It lets you do everything in like a traditional timeline, and then also just a list view, and again you can like color code that, so I use that. It is paid though. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but yeah, it's just something I use to help myself keep track of everything. Readers have asked me, they wanted a timeline that they could look at, so I've been like pulling dates from Aeon to my website's timeline to help everyone keep track. The dates for me aren't that important, but the readers seem to really enjoy it, so I'm like, damn, now I really got to think about, was it November 21st? All right, let's do that. But yeah, that's how I script, and I'm gonna toss that over to Bob.
Yeah. I will say, never tell the readers the dates because they will hold you to those dates,
I
and
know!
it's gonna come back. No,
Bob,
I've been there. I get it 100%. But so I start with just like a simple text document. This is where I swear I'm a planter. I just kind of like throw random notions in the text document, no formatting. They're not even in order. Just when an idea comes to me, I just, toss it in, hop out of the shower. Well, no, I wait till the end of the shower and then, drop them in. And then when I'm ready to go to script phase, I'll generally, okay, yeah, I will have to concede a little what you guys were saying before. This is where I turn it into both a synopsis and a text outline. And then from the synopsis and text outline, I work on my script. And, the script is just for my eyes only, so it's very loose. I don't even type in the characters' names, really. You can see this, B says this, A says that. I know who B and A are, so it works. I use track changes in my Word document so that when I revise things, I can see what I've changed. And then for the broad strokes, for the major plot, zooming out to the full story, that's where I whip out Scapple. And I love Scapple. It's made by the same people that do Scrivener, and it's got the same like super generous trial period where you get 30 days of actual use instead of like 30 days of like calendar days. So,
Yeah.
I downloaded it while I was recovering from surgery in December, and I'm still in my trial period. It's great. And so here's my plot broken down in 6 different ways for chapter 1. We've got summed up in 1 sentence. The yellow boxes are beginning, middle, and end. To the left, to the right-hand side, let's see if I know right and left in Zoom. We've got broken down by scene. And then to the other side, we have chronological timeline for my information only. And then to the left of that, we've got major plot points. So I can, just skim and see, oh yeah, that's where Alistair dies. And it didn't happen too late. So I think I'm good. So then there's a little bit more to this chart. This is the plot section. If we move on to the next, because we can see where the full chart goes.
Bob, I feel like this is lawful plotter behavior from you.
This is my diagnostic outline, and I made it because I was recovering from surgery and I didn't have
Now you
anything else
call
to do.
it a diagnostic outline, Bob.
Bob.
Exposed to level
Yeah,
flutter.
yeah. Yeah, no, because I was trying to diagnose problems in my scripts. And so, okay, this is gonna get worse. Okay, so we go to the left, and that's where we have all the static information, like the backstories, the exposition. We have some subplot stuff there. And then we go to the right-hand side, and that's where we have our dynamic information. So that's our character arcs, our relationship arcs, anything that changes and moves. I see you, Kody. Anything that develops as the story progresses. And it's cross-referenced to to every individual scene in the plot, so that way if I have to move things around, I know what needs to be moved and I know what I'm losing. And okay, that's the end. That's the end.
Incredible. This is so cool though. I love seeing this. Yeah, I love that you like highlighted it in colors for us that we can see. But
Yeah,
that's
so
neat.
then
I got
yeah, you can
I
see if
gotta-
I'm neglecting a character or yeah.
I got to play around with Scapple.
Oh,
Which-
I'm so glad that I go after Bob because
This is the best transition.
I am a mess when it comes to writing a story from like the beginning to the end. So generally, yes, I know what's going to happen. Like I know that my major plot points, but so much of Lies Within is written in the shower where I'm just thinking about like, how am I going to figure out this problem? And then I have my phone on a nearby shelf and I like wipe my hand off and I go into my notes app and I type it down and then I bring all my notes to Trello where I just plug it all in and then sort of use it as like a bunch of post-it notes on a board, so I can drag these around and move them around. I can move the chapters around. So generally what I do is I have Trello boards for each book of Lies Within. Then I have character notes, so like what their problems will be this book, like what their motivations are, that sort of thing. And then I break it down into chapters and then like further into scenes. Everything with like tags have like a little color tag, and that's important for character reasons generally. And yeah, this is how it gets written.
This is how
Oh,
the
yeah.
soup is made.
I have been spreading the gospel of Trello for like years, and I got Jay onto Trello. Like, I love Trello so much. I use it for
Yeah.
like everything.
That's so cool.
So yeah, here's some like my notes app notes. Sometimes it does get written in like full prose. Sometimes it's just like me just like frantically typing out my idea before I lose it because my brain is a sieve. And yeah, in the shower, bedtime, whatever. Just if I get an idea, I'm writing it down.
I just noticed the phone says cool idea.
I was gonna say I just noticed that.
Incredible. So that brings us to Nero.
Yeah, so I'm definitely kind of in the chaotic end of things because I don't really write scripts. Most of my actual writing happens in the thumbnail stage, which is we'll talk about next. The previous two like longer webcomics that I do with my partner, Iris, we kind of had outlines for that because she's also doing most of the writing, so we kind of had to. When I do write stuff, I usually focus on like the specific characters first and then just kind of let it spiral out from there. Think of two guys and then, wouldn't it be fucked up if this happened? That's pretty much how it goes. But yeah, I pretty much just do things in the notes app, kind of like Lacey does, and then just in just a regular doc. Like the first blurred section is the entire ending of Ultraviolence. I just slap it all in a doc and I run with that.
No, that's so cool. I love that one of us is like really like thumbnail scripting heavy. Like that's awesome. I love seeing how everybody works and how everyone's brain works.
I did see Bob's slide and was like, man, I need to get it together.
I know, right?
I know, same.
But don't do it like I'm doing it the wrong way. You don't understand. This is not the right way to do it.
That brings us to the next stage, which is thumbnails. And this is like the only slide that I did like an actual like nice definition of what the stages are. It's gonna get progressively more and more shitposty as this goes on. I'm so sorry, everybody watching. But yeah, thumbnails, they're also called layouts or storyboards, and I like seeing what a comic artist calls it because it kind of gives me a little bit of insight into what their art history is, because I noticed that manga artists and also animators tend to call them storyboards rather than thumbnails or layouts. But anyway, it's where a comic artist roughly marks what's going to happen on the page, what the panel's going to look like, how the dialogue balloons are going to fit. And for this slide, I solicited a bunch of thumbnails from co-op members. So thank you to everybody who submitted your thumbs for this beautiful collage. It's really great. I love seeing how like clean versus how loose people work. And so here's mine, which is where it is revealed that I don't know how to draw. I don't I do most of my art in Clip Studio Paint. So that will be the program that I'm focusing on mainly, but I thumb in CSB using a single weight digital marker to like not let myself get too hung up. Sometimes I thumb over my Blender Lego sets, which I'll go into some more detail later. And other times I'm just like I'll set up the scene in Blender to pick the camera angle there, or I pick the camera angle from my brain and then recreate it in Blender. The way that I approach thumbs, I finally realized, is that they're not supposed to be like the first draft of your page in the sense that you're gonna like necessarily draw over them. It just, for me, it helps to think about it as like I'm drawing a representation of what is gonna happen on the page. So I'm drawing a representation of this character, not the actual character. I don't know if that like makes too much sense, but it like there's symbols more so than my base pencils. Yeah. I wanted to know that these are some really early thumbs of mine, where you can see that I'm leaving space for my dialogue balloons, and they were not enough. And I am trying really hard to get better as I go to leave myself space, and I never leave enough, and that's going to be a running theme that you'll see throughout this PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, no, that was the story of my life when I was doing page format. My first webcomic was also traditional page format, and this one, Into the Smoke, is a vertical scroll. So my process for it is just entirely different from what it was for my other comic. I do my thumbnails fairly larger, and because I'm not really worrying as much about layouts, I'm worrying more about the movement and the flow and how the story kind of travels. And it's less to juggle because people are typically only seeing one panel, two panels on the screen at a time. So it's like a little bit of a different process, but I do it in Procreate because for me, thumbnailing and figuring out layouts is really difficult on a huge screen, and I do everything else on a huge screen. But this is where I have my little 2017 tablets that's really holding up like a champ, and please stay alive as long as possible. I don't want to have to replace you. But yeah, so this is also where I generally get like beta reader feedback, and where I'll make edits to the thumbnails. That very narrow little sliver that you see, like the third image over, that's what a full episode looks like. And you can't see crap there. So I will like chop up the file so I can actually see what I'm doing. But I do have to test out that sliver to see, what I'm doing. And we can go to the next slide for a demo. In order to figure out the pacing of a vertical scroll comic, you have to actually scroll. So that's what I do. Just a lot of finger action there. And this is where the action happens. And then just the right-hand side is what this episode looked like when it was done. I wanted to show this episode because actually this scene was not in my script. All of that effort put into the thumbnails or into the chart, into the script. This was not in the script. I just, improvised it because I'm not good at scripting action. That I kind of have to feel out as I go. Dialogue, yes, I will script that to hell. But this just got to kind of sit down and draw it and feel it out and have a little bit of a soul. So yeah, that's how I work with thumbnails.
I totally feel that. I always I don't script my action either. I'm that's straight to thumbnails. I bet Nero's the same. But this blew my mind when I saw it, like that you actually have to scroll. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I do it on both desktop and my phone too. I like load the PDF on my phone. Yeah.
So for me, I didn't mention this before with my writing, but yeah, for me, most of my dialogue writing does happen in the thumbnails. I like to blow them up really large and then actually write in what I want the characters to say, like as I'm going. I kind of just feel it out. A lot of my stuff, I try to make it feel very natural, very conversational. So I'm basically just having little conversations in my head all of the time between like my little characters. These are my nicest thumbnails I've ever done in my life. I'm doing a little something. I'm kind of moving around chapter 1, kind of changing it a little bit. So this is something only my patrons have seen so far. So enjoy. So yeah, sorry.
No, they're so clean. I love that in my ideal world, my thumbs would always look this clean.
Always, but for the most part, what I want to get down in my
Ta-da!
thumbs, I'm like Kody. I want to get down the like general expression. Like you could see on the second page here, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth panel down. That's supposed to be someone running their hands through their hair. I know that, but so if I'm doing a bunch at once, I'll do just enough so I know what's going on. It's not like my underlayer, like I'm not sketching over this. This is just like what is happening over these pages and what are they saying. And I usually have enough room because I try to blow them up and do my dialogue at like actual size, so that I'm not running into like problems. Yeah, so those are a good balance. I'm not like doing pages and pages of talking heads. Like someone once told me that you should always see your character's feet in every webcomic page. I know that's not a hard and fast rule, but it's something I try to do sometimes just for like a little bit of balance. But yeah.
Now I'm gonna go look at my pages and be like, how many feet did I draw on this
Yeah.
page?
So just focus on the feet in every panel.
Yeah.
Am I doing this right?
Show feet.
But I love this. I love your stick figures are so good.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so these are 3 slides because the previous one was so sparse. My thumbnails are my scripts. I don't do a scrolling comic, but I just kind of got into the habit of having these long strips. I used to use when I worked traditionally, I used to use printout templates, and I would do the same thing on there. This, I mean, it just kind of saves time, I suppose. Each template is 20 pages, which is kind of like a good, usually it's enough for like kind of a scene or like a couple of different scenes. It's enough to get pretty far. I put all of the speech and the sound effects, like I do them color coded. As you can kind of see on the right, they're also numbered. So I'll write down the text and then where they correspond. So that when I zoom out, I can see kind of like the flow of the page as somebody who's reading, because flow is very important to me. I keep them
Yeah.
super rough. Like you can see on the top right, it just says walking through big garden. I should have included the how that panel actually looks, because it's like a giant building. I do this to myself frequently. But you know what? That's fine. I'll usually type the text out if there's a lot of talking, but if there's a little bit, I'll just write it myself because it's just faster. My handwriting is awful though, so if anybody else is looking at it, it has to be typed up. Like it's very much a doctor's cursive kind of style of writing.
I love this because you're the cartoonist of UV, where you're the writer and the artist. Like, I mean, we're all the
Yeah.
cartoonists of our own, but I love that like no one after you needs to look at the stage. So it's just how do you communicate to yourself as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, sometimes I'll show to friends, and it's like if I know I'm gonna like show it to a friend, I have to be like, okay, well, I gotta type this because I'm not gonna make them read that. I'm not gonna do that to them. So one of the reasons I do like working kind of long like this, and why I was like, oh, I'm kind of like a chaos plotter here, is I like to cut and paste and move things around really frequently. Um, there will be sections where I will block out a couple of different scenes. Like if I know in a scene, like, okay, these characters have to have a conversation, then they're gonna go here, then this is gonna happen. I'll just kind of like write that out and then put arrows like kind of around where it's going to be, because again, I'm very like flow and like pacing focused. So when I have them out, I can just kind of shift things around as needed. I do all of this on a similarly old iPad. But the yeah, sometimes I'll just switch things around last minute because it makes more sense. It's very it's not loosey goosey, but it is very how should we say
It's Lucy Goosey's cousin.
yeah, a word that is nicer than that.
If there's a goose, I'm on board. So
Yeah.
We've named an OC for Bob just now.
Persona era. Okay, this I'm actually very excited to talk about, because you all talked about you mentioned not scripting out your action. I do all of it in thumbnails too, where I one of the reasons I like to do this way is because I can draw like little maps to see where characters are going. um you can kind of see how loose my thumbnails are compared to the final pages. I kind of color coded them here. um it's just kind of easier to keep things consistent. With this scene in particular, I wanted to make sure like the flow of Oscar jumping across a table to tackle Sergio made sense. Because it's like a very I tricked myself and I put this fight in like a conversation pit, which is actually really annoying, apparently. I tricked myself. But you can see also some of the cut and paste method. The very first speech in the first thumbnail is moved to the last panel on the second page. The bit where the brother is shouting Oscar, I move that. Yeah, it's very I don't
I
know.
love this. It's so cool. It's like a little like it's your own language. Like it
I
just
feel so
reminds
vulnerable.
No,
Oh no.
this is
I love
clearly
that it's described as encryption in the chat. I love it.
Yeah, it's really good.
yeah, it's like it's your own language to yourself. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, that's so cool. I love
I
it.
have tried to kind of make my brain work in like the very formalized methods, like using like there's some really good templates for like writing scripts out there where they're more like kind of like movie style, and I can't do that. I have to like see things so I can
Yeah.
discover the scene, you know?
Yeah, you're a visual writer. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I like that you mentioned that you make that little diagram like of the map of the like the floor plan so you can track your character's movement throughout the scene. Because I
Yeah.
do the same thing, but just in Blender.
Same.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, I just draw it.
That leads us to pensos, and as you can see, I didn't even attempt to write what pensos are, but it's the first time you actually draw your comic page if you don't count the little encryptions we were all doing in thumbs. I've got that Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun meme
My
in
body
there.
remembers.
Yeah, because that's what I feel like every time I get to pensos. It's like
Absolutely.
I have to remember how to draw every single time.
Every time. And
Yeah.
it never changes.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, I think that we all work in batches of pages, so we don't do one page at a time. Like
Yeah.
you do a couple pages, yeah. And so yeah, whenever I get around to the penso stage again, it's like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. So here are my pensos, and again, these are like sort of early pensos where I was doing most of my problem solving, but not all. So I would leave some things to be like, oh, that's future Cody's problem. He can fix that guy's face, like when he's doing inks. And ultimately, after maybe 40 or so pages of this, I realized that that was a really inefficient way of working. So now my pencils are even tighter. I do in the sense that I really try to solve all my problems here so that inking Cody doesn't have to worry about it. You can see that I do really love Clip Studio Paint's like just making a layer blue feature. You can also make a folder blue. I use that to knock back things that I'm not focusing on, that I'm like, yeah, that's solid enough, and I'll focus on something else. And you can also see that I'm only penciling characters, which is because I do not pencil my backgrounds. The Blender is my pencils for my background. So the first step of my pencils is to set up the scene in my Lego sets in Blender, which is basically when I recreate whatever camera angle I told myself I would do in the thumbnails. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I will be talking exclusively about this in a panel next weekend, called Beginning to End, a creative process conversation. Yeah. I did also want to mention that along with the taking screenshots of my Blender sets, I also do use 3D assets within Clip Studio Paint. And like there's plenty of great ones in the asset store, but sometimes you want a specific Gibson guitar because you don't want to let down actual guitar players who may or may not read your comic. I don't know. So you have to go and get a specific model. So this is just how I would bring in a model from somewhere like Blender Kit, or if I bought something off of like Turbo Squid. Yeah, and so I just searched for guitar and I saw this Sasquatch foot guitar and I was like, yeah, that is what I'm going to use as my example. So you just find a model, whether that's within Blender from Blender Kit itself, or if you bought it off of Turbo Squid or Sketchfab, wherever you might have gotten your model. You export it as a FBX, and if you want that model to have its textures, you hit path mode to copy, and you like toggle that little icon. I don't know. I think it looks like to me a filing cabinet drawer with 2 files poking out of it. You toggle that on. And then you import that FBX into CSP's modeler program, which comes with if you got Clip Studio Paint, you have CSP modeler. You just may never have opened it before. You just import that in, register it as a new material, and cowabunga, dude, you're good to go. It's now a material in CSP that you can drag and drop into your canvas. So I don't know, maybe I gotta find something to write in a scene with the Squatch foot guitar.
Well, you need a foot in every panel, so that's a good loophole to get it in there.
Boom!
Yeah, so I love how Kody is so gentle with future Kody, trying to solve all of future Kody's problems, because I think future Bob likes to suffer, and I'm just like, just get it. So I will only pencil what I don't think I can freehand in inks, but you know what? That's a lot of stuff because I'm not great at freehanding in inks. So here's a little example of what my thumbnail looked like and what my pencils looked like for a particular panel. And I basically had to redraw the characters, but I wasn't touching the background because I'm not going to do that twice. I do like backgrounds with different techniques depending on the needs of the panel. Like if it's an environment that I'm going to use and reuse, I'll do a 3D model. My first webcomic, I built all of my models myself. This one, since it takes place in like more of a contemporary setting, I'm like, I'm not going to rebuild the chair when the chair exists out there. So I just download the chair. But yeah, we can move on to the next panel, or the next, you know what I mean. Here are some examples of just some pencils that utilized 3D. I will typically do a quick trace over the 3D just because it's the visual noise. I have trouble knowing what I'm looking at if the 3D shot is there, but it's like, just taking a little extra time to do that and yeah. But the middle column, you can kind of see how the camera kind of rotates around that scene and around that table. And that's the type of thing where I find it's really useful to have 3D if you don't have like quite the level of mental visualization to be able to turn it around in your head, or the schedule to permit you to do that. And some things I just freehand, like when your lovely romantic interest is stuck on the ceiling. But yeah, so that's what my pencils look like. I do that also actually in Procreate.
Oh,
And
that's
then
cool.
yeah, and then I will have already dropped in my rough lettering at this point that I do on desktop in Photoshop, but I think, is that all I had for pencils? It might be.
You've got one more.
Oh, I got one. Oh, yeah. Okay. So when I'm not doing 3D models and stuff, I will sometimes need references. So it's just kind of a time suck to have to actually seek out references for like difficult poses or, complicated things. I'll use 3D if something is like in perspective and like really difficult, very foreshortened, needs to blend in. But my hack, let's see if I can actually demonstrate it behind me.
You've got the
Got a
coolest
full-length
hands.
mirror. Full-length mirror in my office. It's actually torture to have a full-length mirror directly next to you as you're working all the time. That's why I don't wear sweats while I work. It's the shame, But but yeah, so anytime I need to, I just rotate in my chair, do the pose. If I need to photograph it, I can photograph it. I got a little gooseneck mount phone holder so I can photograph things. Yeah, hire me to be your creepy ghost hand model. It's my one and only skill. I've got the knobby fingers. I'd be so good at it. Just, pay more money. Yeah.
Dude.
So
Like you would be surprised at how many times I'm like, oh, what does a neck look like when it's doing this motion?
yeah.
And it takes me forever to remember that I have a neck that I can go look at in the mirror.
Although, depending on the neck you have to draw, when you got those big, beefy, triangle-shaped necks, it's like, I think I can at least get the rough approximation and then kind of extrapolate it onto the character.
Exactly.
And maybe every once in a while they might have very tiny, dainty hands, but that's their problem. So, yeah.
I love that. And we've got Lacey.
I am trying to eliminate pencils from my life forever. I have started just inking over because I use the CSP model. Like that's basically my pencils is the time I spend like posing them and getting the right angle and like moving them and like trying to get them as close to my thumbnail image as I can. So I have like different characters on the side here. So they all have their own like
like
custom
proportions.
body. Yeah, proportions. Yeah. But yeah, I drop them into my file and I just go right into inks over that. Unless there's something that's like a little more complicated, I'm not really nailing it. But for the most part, I'm trying to get rid of pencils. It's just I'm trying to eliminate them from my life.
Your power, Lacey, like to just raw dog it from the CSP
just
model.
Raw dog it out here. And I did want to mention, like, you really went into like how you use Blender as like your scenes. I do have some scenes, like some different rooms that I know I'm going to use a lot in SketchUp. I like using SketchUp. It's not pretty. It's a hilarious looking program, but it works for what I need it for. Like if I need several different angles of the same room, like I've got like an office, I've got like the house that they're in all the time. I've got their townhouses as SketchUp models, and I just use and reuse them.
Yeah, no, I started doing 3D stuff in SketchUp, so that's where I got my start. But then I just like could not afford the annual fee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've got one more.
Oh yeah, so I also do a lot of shots of Toronto, and I really want to get them accurate. And when I started my comic, I lived there, and where everyone like lives and moves around was very close to where I lived. Like it was in the same neighborhood, so I took like a ton of pictures. And this one though, I took very recently. I was staying with a friend, and he had a really great view of his balcony. So I took this photo and I pulled it out, and then I just like took my like marquee tool and just started tracing over it, like. And then it looks great. Like
it really does. Yeah, like the windows look so good. Like, oh man.
I have a little square brush for my windows.
Smart.
So similar to everybody else here, I also use 3D a lot because I don't like penciling very much. I do them for like the sake of blocking, especially for like stuff like this fight scene. Where I pretty much just go over them with like a soft brush. Sometimes I will switch the brush that I'm using for pencils like halfway through just to like keep myself from getting too detailed with them. Like usually it's this like this big soft brush. When I'm using 3D, I usually just like flatten, and then I don't extract lines for line art, but I do extract lines for pencils, so I'll ink over them later. Like the bathroom on the right was absolutely a 3D model I found of a bathroom, and it's interesting how much 3D is kind of like a part of everyone's workflow, in that like not just because we want to save time, but also because we want to be accurate about things.
Yeah.
Like especially like for me, I have like kind of like, I mean, I'm sure all of us probably have some form of repetitive stress injury. But like I'm really bad at drawing like circles and like curved things. Like my arm doesn't like that shape. So stuff like sinks, or like chairs, like that kind of stuff where there's like a lot of curves, I like struggle with. So it's like, okay, if I'm gonna do this once, I'm gonna ink it and it'll be good then. Like I don't have to worry about that now.
Yeah, that's so smart. Yeah, I mean, like, it's all about, like, I mean, we're all in webcomics, so we do have the luxury of sort of setting our own schedules, but we're also all, like, comics take so much time, so whatever time you and like physical injury you can save yourself, like, please do, like, please.
Also, it's just nice when everything is like accurate in like the from like panel to panel in a
Yeah.
comic, because I have gone back to old comics that I've done where things like shift slightly in the background and then I'm mad at myself.
Oh, continuity is so much. It's so much to keep up with. Like if you
Yeah.
don't have to think about it,
Yeah,
so good.
it's such a load off my mind.
Yeah.
And then there's always going to be that one reader who's just really observant that's like, hey, what happened to this thing?
Yeah. There was the previous webcomic I did, Split Check, for Slipshine with my partner. I actually went and paid a friend of a friend to model an entire restaurant kitchen. Because there weren't any good
Oh,
ones. Like there weren't
yeah.
any that were like exactly what I wanted. Like most of them were like either too big or like didn't have the right tools.
Right.
So I went and I talked to her and I was like, hey, I need this restaurant kitchen for this comic. I'm gonna give you some money. Can you just make sure it has like this, and this in it? And that worked out great. Highly recommend it.
That's great.
That's awesome. I also just want to mention I really love Oscar's eyes on the first page in the second like large panel with the low dots. So good. But yeah, that leads us to the next stage that we all do in comics, which is inking. And I pulled this incredible shot from Nero's webcomic. Like, look at that. That dang.
So beautiful.
So
I didn't
good.
pencil most of that. I just went wild.
So for me, inks are actually now my favorite part of the comic making process, which is wild because I never used to draw inks, which is because I never used to draw. And I gotta like explain that sentence, which is that I primarily, my art background is in digital painting, which there was never a pencil stage for me when I was painting. It was just starting from the beginning, slapping down color or paint on the canvas, and then using values and hue changes to start sculpting. So I would never have pencils. I would never have an inking stage there. Maybe at the very end, once the painting was finished, I would go in and sort of trace the contours of a figure. But it was very much a backwards process. So this is all new to me, penciling and inking. I only started doing this for keeping time, but it's now my favorite part. So like I mentioned earlier, I sort of in earlier pages of keeping time, I would leave a lot of problem solving up to my inking self to fix. And now I'm at a stage where I do all of that in pencil. So when I'm inking, I can only think about the rhythm, the movement of the lines, and the harmony of them throughout the panels. And it's fun. It's great. I could not ink without Clip Studio Paint's vector eraser, so all my inks are in Clip Studio Paint's vectors, vector layers. And I also wanted to shout out Jason Pipeberg's brushes. Let me drop the link to there, which I use for a for the backgrounds. I also I never erase my overlapping inks, so I ink characters on their own folder separate from the backgrounds just in case I want to like nudge things by a couple of pixels because maybe somebody didn't leave enough space for a dialogue balloon. I don't know who do that, not me. But yeah, so I never have like a pretty inks to like show off because they look like this.
Oh, that's me. Yep.
That's
So
you.
we got our same sequence, and this is where future Bob had to do the background that past pencil Bob didn't want to deal with. But you know, future Bob knows all the shortcuts. So you know, when I do inks, one thing is I do very heavy like color and shading. So my inks are fairly bare bones. I'm not really going in with a whole lot of texture or a whole lot of like spot blacks. I'm mostly just kind of like outlining. I learned this the hard way because, you know, I enjoy digital inking, specifying digital inking because I have a shaky hand and I am not good at traditional inking. I only started to enjoy inking when I could do it digitally. And only after I got a Cintiq, actually, because I used to ink on an Intuos, and that was not terribly fun because that's the non-screen tablet. Takes a lot of hand-eye coordination
Oh,
and
same. My first tablet was like a Monoprice, which is like the super cheap knockoff of the
oh,
Intuos, and like I just thought I had no pen control because that thing like it was everything was so
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I had to like zoom into 500% just to like get the lines right. Yeah. And so it's so much easier now. Yeah, like having the right equipment to make things actually fun and to make things enjoyable and to make you actually able to do it. It's actually very important. And yeah, someone Alex mentioned glove. Glove is important. I just hate having like that heat and the stickiness on my hand as I'm drawing. So yeah, very important. But yes, my inks are fairly bare bones. All the foliage in this scene, that's like just foliage brushes that I do on like a stroke layer. I have like a shortcut. I just hit the shortcut and it makes me a stroke layer in Photoshop, and I just, you know, do the foliage in it. And then I have another shortcut I hit that gets rid of the white and turns it into lines. And yeah, we can move on to the next. So I like the complicated part of inking for me is just breaking it up into different layers, because later on in the coloring stage, I'm going to use these layers to automate flatting. And we'll talk about flatting later. I'm sure most of you probably already know what flatting is. But basically, my inks are just kind of there to hold my colors. And every major ink layer is going to be, you know, is going to get its own flats layer. And for me, that's important because I made the genius decision that my ghosts are going to be translucent and that they're going to glow. And so I have automatic actions to make that happen, but it has to be on its own layer. And, you know, detail stuff like cross-hatching, like texture, I have that on a separate layer too, so it can be turned off when I do the automations. And it actually is turned off automatically too. So just, you know, this is where the effort goes into, is just having the different layers and knowing what layer you're on. That's actually the most important part. This is how big I have to ink, because so I'm doing vertical scroll, and you know, uh, common wisdom would tell you, you know, do your comics at print size so that then you can shrink it down to digital very easily. And that is true. But I also believe that you should prioritize the version of the comic that people are actually going to read. And for me, since it's vertical scroll, it means that I create the comic in vertical scroll. That's how it's meant to be read. That's like where the, you know, the flow happens. That's how I visualize it. But that also means that I do every single panel at full print size so that I can resize it if I want to do a page layout. So here, left-hand side of this image, you have my little vertical scroll episode. Right-hand side, we have some little test layouts there. And the thing about doing, I mean, it is a pain. It's not really too much extra time though. It's just you have to have a little bit of a steadier hand to do it that big. I do it at 600 DPI. And it just gives me ultimate flexibility in actually making layouts that I feel are somewhat interesting, because it is vertical scroll first, but I want the page layouts to still be fun. They're not going to be as good as they would be if I had done it straight, as page layouts, but it's like a nice compromise for me. And then I believe I have one more slide.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I was so excited when I saw these like page layout versions of Into the Smoke, because I don't think I've seen you share that anywhere. So it was like, oh, look at
that was
that.
only to my $10 patrons. So actually, we are getting a little bit of a sneak here. Yeah. So this is going to be a video. So I have tattoo brushes because Blaze is covered in tattoos, and I underestimated how much time he would spend without clothes on. My mistake.
You should have known.
Devastating mistake. So I have brushes for the tattoos. Sometimes for his hand tattoos, I'll draw them by hand because it's easier. Usually a simple lattice warp is enough to position a tattoo from a tattoo brush, but I just wanted to show this little demo. This is Puppet Warp in Photoshop, and it's handy for if you want to really position something in like a real granular way. It's very handy. I used it a lot when I was doing product development because I would do like product mock-ups and just use the same figurine over and over, but I needed to make it look different. So I just reposition its arm and, make it move. And it's just very handy that way to be able to just kind of transform things. So
this blew my mind because I was also using lattice warp for tattoos in a comic that I did in the past, but seeing Puppet Warp, and I know CSP just put in Puppet Warp in one of their most recent updates. So I was just like,
ooh,
dude, I'm gonna try this.
It's very fun.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Actually, what I enjoy most is just like take a character like pin up and just make them dance. That's what I like to just to amuse myself sometimes. So yes.
Whoop.
Okay, so yeah, like I said before, I had someone way smarter than me once ask me, like, why are my sketches not my inks? Like, if you're getting 80% of the way there in your sketches, just make them your inks. So that's what I do now. The on the left here at the bottom was probably one of the last pages that I did sketches, and that was the sketch. And I'm like, well, you're right, that could be an ink. And I do the shoes are a little janky in the sketch. I do buy shoe models and just draw over them, warp them, trace them, because shoes are hard. And
shoes are hard. We can't
like
all be
having some
Amalis
nice
Rosa.
shoes. Yeah. So you can see here from my now I would just take the doll and draw the right side over that. Shoes are the bikes of clothing. You're right.
That's true.
I've
Yeah.
always loved how you did shoes though, so I love hearing that because it's like, oh, okay, that's handy. They're
I'm
really
not
so
drawing
good.
them from scratch. Those are
but they all
store-bought
like
shoes.
But they look lacy-y. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it's not just like a you're killing it.
So Photoshop mentioned. I would say 80% of my work is done in Photoshop. I started using Photoshop. I'm used to Photoshop. I could, Adobe boo, but love Photoshop. I can't get away from it. I can't move to CSP full time. I've tried, I just can't. So I'm a big
It's the
fan
toxic X of
It is.
programs. You can't give them up.
Yeah.
Lacey, I wanted to ask
it.
you, do you use Lazy Nezumi for like line stabilization at all? Or are you
No.
just what the fuck? Dude,
I have very steady hands. I was gifted with very steady hands. I use about a 10% on the Photoshop like native stabilizer. I just use that. It's at about 10. I can tell sometimes when it's off, but for the most part, like I was gifted with very steady hands. So
I'm just like imagining, those like power charts for video game characters. So like Lacey's power in the hand stabilization is like way up. Me and Bob are way down.
Oh, hey.
I'm
about a 20. I'm about a 20 on the Photoshop stabilizer. But yeah.
Dang. Okay,
that's where I
Bob
put
is
all my
hands
skill
over there.
I love inking. It is like the best. Inking is the only thing that matters. If I could just if a comic could come fully formed out of my brain so that I could ink it, we'd be good forever. Like I'd never complain about anything. I pretty much only use 3 brushes, which are the modified version of I use Clip Studio Paint, for pretty much everything. I use the real G pen, but a modified version that's really, really soft. I use a Pigma Micron texture brush, which is one of Friendin's brushes that's also modified for how hard I like to press on the screen. And then my ultimate favorite is the Shinderu pen, which is a modified version of another pen I found on the CSP Asset Store that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. Otherwise, I would be linking it to everybody. But it's this nice like deadline
Gotcha.
texture with like just a little bit of tapering at the end, and it's like the perfect brush. I also when I was doing traditional inking for webcomics, I pretty much only use the I would switch between the Maru nibs, the round ones, the Rotring Rapidograph, which is like an architect brush, and their architect pen, and then the Pentel Pocket brush pen, which if you want to get into brush pen stuff, highly recommend giving that a shot. They're pretty cheap. They come with like 2 little refills. You can refill them with different ink afterwards. It's actual brushes, like instead of like a weird foam thing like the Sakura and Micron ones where it's like a weird triangle. Don't use those. Or maybe if you want to, you can. But yes, this is like the best part of art for me. It's the good stuff. This is where I make like most of the actual like drawing decisions. Like it's a little closer to painting in that like things are very flexible. Like I will move things around and I'll layer things. Like textures on pages are usually like I'll go over things a couple of different times, usually with black, and then I like using I'm not sure how many people know this, but the clear function in CSP, it's the little transparent bar below your colors. You can turn any brush into an eraser, and it's really good for vectors because it will keep the vector line but act as an eraser, so you can move your erased section around. It's really neat. I use I use exclusively vector layers for so many reasons. And then like I'll have this is kind of like what a page usually looks like for me. I have an auto action that sets up all of these folders and everything each time. It's pretty much just the vector inks. Just everything is on one. I'm sorry. I do everything on one layer, except for the spot black or the beta, which is technically a raster, but it's a so CSP has this thing where you can remove like all gray from a layer, so it's just black or white, kind of like thresholding in Photoshop.
Just learned about this.
Yeah. I saw people talking about that on Blue Sky, and I was like, oh, you're learning the good word. Hell yeah, because it makes a lot of textured brushes appear very differently. Like they have such a nice texture now, and there's some that like I can't use like the regular version of them. It has to be the monochrome version. Yep. All of the textures, like I was saying, I kind of layer things over and over. Pink here is the all of what would be on that vector ink layer. And then everything else was the real I believe there's also a dithering pen in here. Yeah, there's a dithering effect here too, but it's just the real G pen, and then the Shinderu pen. But a bunch of it was dog photos that I kind of like photo bashed, and then I just inked over them, and kind of like messed them around, kind of cut. I love to cut and paste. I'm a cut and paster. Don't let me near a magazine with scissors.
Looks so good.
And then I swear this is the last one, but this was also something I really, really wanted to talk about. Vector inks are like so incredibly useful. Like you can select things and like move them around, and you don't have to do the digital artist like trap of redrawing like a single line over and over. You can just grab a point and drag it, and it saves me so much time.
Yeah, like I don't have to Control Z because it's like, I can just like rotate that line I drew.
Yeah, it's like
it was a perfect line, but just like
you just nudge it over. Like with my I use like an iPad for everything, but I have like a little Bluetooth keyboard, so sometimes I'll just like select something and then I'll use the little arrow keys to just nudge it over.
Your iPad CSPing this, Nero?
Oh yeah, this is so everything. I should have mentioned this at the beginning. Everything
Oh
I
my
do is
goodness.
on a 2017 iPad Pro, 10.5 inches. Uh,
2017 was the good year. That's
it
for
was the
iPads.
good
Yeah.
year. It was a good year. But like that's my exclusive like I don't nothing else happens on that except for art, and it has stayed like a workhorse since then. Like
Incredible.
I try to take as good care of it as I can.
I'm just praying for both of your iPads.
my
They
goodness.
never die.
Yes.
Oh, but wait,
Uh,
there was one last thing I wanted to talk about. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
So one of the things I really like is my little fun tip. With vector inks, you can do a thing where you change the brush shape, and you can if you're, using like a 3D model of, I don't know, a bathroom or whatever, or a classroom, something like that. You can extract the lines, turn it into a vector, and then change the brush shape, and you can get like it looks like it was actually drawn, if you use like a very kind of like textured or wiggly brush.
Yeah.
Yes, that was it.
No, that's a good one. It makes it like you change it to your favorite brush shape.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I wanted to point out we have 25 minutes left. We are on flats. We've got colors, letters, and posting to go. So just for
We're
us
getting there.
panelists. But yeah, flats, aka paint by numbers, but professionally. And I want to point out these are actual flats that I stole from Bob's social media.
Yeah, I recognize these flats. Yeah.
These are Bob's flats. So for me, my flats are pretty straightforward, but see, this is where, like, because I'm flatting and inking my characters on separate folders from my backgrounds, now I can wiggle them around. Aha! Basically, I just, like Nero, I live and die by vectors, filling up to vector path, and I use the ice cream tool for inks that are especially fiddly that haven't been closed very well, because like my black hair inks are all basically individual strokes, right? So they don't actually necessarily the vector points touch to close and create a full shape that can be easily paint bucketed. So I use ice cream tool, my beloved. I will drop that link in the chat.
Yep, here are my flats. And so I use two Photoshop plugins that I absolutely love. I've been using them for like probably 10 years. It's Multifill and Flatten Pro. Multifill is free, and it just randomly fills your entire page with like different colors. And then Flatten Pro is paid, but it's something like $30. I've definitely gotten my money's worth out of it. And what it does is it expands the color so that there's no gap between any of the colors, and they're all perfectly butted up against each other. And that's important for printing, so that if anything in the line art shifts, you got no gaps underneath. It's very, very handy. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm always
And-
doing that manually, like making sure it's pixel perfect for print, just in case, like you said, the black shift. That's so cool.
Yeah, so this shot got 3 stages. The first is right after I do the multifill and flatten pro, and it's just all random colors. And then after that, I'll just drop in local color from my little template at the bottom, where I've gotten everyone's just kind of basic color without any consideration for lighting, for lighting colors, for atmospheric effects, and so on. And I will generally do my backgrounds in grayscale and just drop a gradient map over it, and then drop that same gradient map over the character flats to harmonize the colors. And so that's how you get to the last shot. Isn't fully harmonized yet, but it's not as glaringly weird. And speaking of glaringly weird, we can move on to the next beautiful slide, which is when you get random colors, you are sometimes just gifted with a bonus Oompa Loompa, and it is so good. I love it so much. Anytime I get like a gift in my auto flatting, I just take a quick screenshot. So anyway, we can move on next. So this is okay, we'll just let it play. This is what happens when I do my auto flats. So I create a patching layer and just like kind of manually close gaps because my inks are pretty clean. And then it outputs these layers. And for me, because I have my ghosts and my living people on separate layers, I kind of have to do it a little differently. And then afterwards, I just do some quick bucket filling, where I grab it from my faceless wonder over there and just fill it. And then at the end, just select them all with contiguous turned off. So you get like, you know, if you select the skin tone, you get that skin tone in every single panel. And it's just a quick way to select everything, toss it on a new layer, and yep, that's it.
That's so cool, Bob.
So it's just basically all automated. Oh, good.
Yeah, how long does that take, like, to run that action and then
6
correcting?
seconds.
Holy cow, that's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, getting that down, and I very rarely even have to do cleanup on it, only like every once in a while. It's very handy. But if your inks are very open, then you do have to spend more time manually closing stuff, because Photoshop, I've requested this feature so many times from Photoshop, but there's no like automatic closing of open lines with like bucket fill or anything like that. So I do manually close my lines, but I'm also control freak. I want to close them my way. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's flatting for me.
Awesome. And then we've, how do I, there, oh, okay.
So I also really dislike the way Photoshop's bucket fill works. So I close everything, I open it back up in Clip Studio where they have bucket fills that work properly. And I just go in and I have like, I don't really do much for my flats other than like I have, what are they called? Palettes for all of my characters. And I just go in and I just start bucket filling like that. And it's, you know, for the most part, like Clip gets a lot of it. Like it's really good. All I have to do is when I open it back up in Photoshop, like I'll need to go back in and like color in like the little spots that might get missed. But I try not to zoom in too much. I'm terrible at this. I zoom in so much. But yeah, I just go straight to bucket fill and just fill everything in. And for the most part, like my flats are my colors, because my comic's black and white. So most of the work is done in flats.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like your meme of hi,
Oh my God,
how are you?
hi.
I'm also a bucket fill enjoyer. It's so useful, and I'll go more into it in the actual coloring with like a different comic of mine. But similarly, because Ultraviolence is in black and white, it's like once they're in there, it's already done. Also, I used to do a wacky thing where I'd like expand the line so that I could avoid like the spaces underneath the line art until I discovered the fill up to vector path and include vector path. It bumps all of those together. Like you don't have to worry about spaces anymore. It rules.
Rules.
The hours saved, hours.
Literally, CSP saving our lives. So now we're almost through the page creation process, colors. And I just love this page from Lacey. I love how Lacey uses spot colors. And I'm super stoked to have Nero and Lacey here, some artists who primarily work in grayscale. For me, colors, I love it. I'm sure you can tell that I love it. All my favorite colors are not CMYK friendly, so they will not print. But I have figured that I don't know if Keeping Time will ever get a print run. Like I do like make my pages set up in case they do, but so I know that Keeping Time will live online as a comic far longer than it ever will as print. So I just let myself enjoy the coloring process, and I let myself have my out of gamut colors. So like Bob was saying, like the longevity is going to be the online version probably, and so we're focusing on that first, and then letting the print be an afterthought. I do try to use value across the page to control focal point and page flow. So I'm always just checking my values. I set a layer filled with black and set the blending mode to color, put that layer above all the other ones, just so I can kind of get a good sense of where my high contrast areas are and where my low contrast areas are. So I often use areas of high contrast to try to pull a reader's eye throughout the page, and I'll knock back things that are less important with low contrast. And I'm also constantly checking how one scene's color palette flows into the next, both across the page, both from page across the chapter, and from that chapter throughout the entire narrative. And I sort of picked that up from animation because they make color scripts of like an entire movie. And yeah, so that's just something I keep in mind. I may not do the best job of it, but it's just something that I think about when I'm coloring.
So here's where the light and the shadow come in for me. We already kind of talked about flatting, and this is where I kind of do the final touches, make sure that everything really meshes and blends with each other, make sure like the light and shadow colors work with each other. And we just got a little toggle here on the right-hand side showing with and without all the shading. We can go to the next. So I do my backgrounds in various different ways, but in the end, they still kind of have to like come together and look like they're in the same comic. So here's just like on the left-hand side, a little rundown of how I handle a photo background, how I handle a 3D render. And then in the middle is kind of that dilemma of like, are the colors telling the story that I want to be told? For me, my comic takes place in Chicago. I love downtown Chicago colors. They just mean a lot to me, and I've thrown out so many beautiful palettes because they don't feel Chicago enough. So it's like, you know, sometimes you got to make those sacrifices. And then on the right-hand side, this is actually an episode. Part of this hasn't gone live yet, but you're getting a little bit of a preview. An episode that has a few different color palettes in it, and just kind of how the story of the color progresses through the panels. I do, since I split up my episodes so I can see them all kind of at the same time, I get a sense for how the colors will go together. And even though it doesn't really matter right now, later on when I do my page format adaptation, I know that nothing will end up clashing or being weird. And plus, I just, I like it to be pretty, even if no one's going to see it at the same time. So, yeah. And then this is what my workspace looks like while I'm coloring. I have basically an entire scene open, and I'm kind of working across it simultaneously. I'll have a few other panels open from previous episodes. There's my iMac and my Cintiq, and for coloring, I'll do a little bit on like a non-screen tablet and a little bit on a screen tablet, but just gotta give the shrimp a break every now and then. But yeah, that's what coloring looks like for me.
So for me, I keep it pretty simple. Usually just a little bit of shading, and mostly if my comics has a scene taking place at night is really when I'm doing shading. If it's during the day, I leave it really flat. I just like to let my ink shine through. I think it's like the best part of my art, so I don't want to make it too complex. And yeah, I use a lot of red for blood and big impact scenes like that one. I like using it for impact. It's really fun, and it's not quite pure red. There's a little bit of blue in there because I like making it a little bit almost hot pink.
Yeah, in my
Love the hot
head,
pink.
this is the Lies Within red. Like this,
Yeah.
this specific color. If I see it anywhere, I'm like, Lies Within red.
Yay. Yeah, I'd love to say here I use certain values like
Vibes.
Kody does for narrative reasons, but most of it's just vibes, like what looks cool, like what looks good in this scene. So
Yeah, that's important.
yeah. So here's some things I think look cool.
Vibes are important.
Vibes are important.
That's
like,
artistic instinct.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm gonna start using that.
So, usually I don't color things because I don't like coloring. I don't know what it is about the process that just like feels like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Oh,
It's never
big
been
same.
fun. One day I'll figure it out. Ultraviolence is in grayscale for this reason. One of my previous webcomics that I did with my partner Iris J, that was a page rate paid comic split check about two gay chefs. That kind of solidified a lot of like what I consider to be like my coloring style, where I did work in like grayscale flats, and then I would slap a gradient map over all of it, and would define that kind of per scene or like per room, add any color edits, and then add any like special highlights, and then that would be it. You can kind of see in the bottom middle there what that page looks like without those color edits. There's two different gradient maps at play for the two different scenes that are there, and then the edits are just like the kind of like the plants on the bottom left. And yeah, I try to like do it as little as possible, but also that like some people like to see color in a webcomic, and I'm like, okay, you're valid, I suppose.
We love both. Both is good.
Both is good.
Panelists, I want to pitch you the idea of ending our presentation here and uploading the PowerPoint for viewers to take a look at their own leisure so that we can leave about 10 minutes for Q&A. How are we feeling about that?
That's
Works
fine
for
with
me.
me.
I'd be fine with that, yeah.
All right, so then moderators, we'd love to open up the floor to viewer Q&A. I'll put us on that slide.
Yeah, we can peek through.
Yeah, look at all this good stuff. I will post the link to this PowerPoint in just a second.
All right, so for questions, feel free to raise your hand and then I can unmute you to ask it, or you can put it in the chat. And I see that we already have one in the chat, so I'll go ahead and read that aloud. So from Alex, how do you determine canvas size and DPI for a comic that will eventually be printed? Can we talk canvas sizes and resolutions for a moment? What are you all working with?
I know Lacey and I are at 6x9, right? Our page size.
Yeah, I draw it in 12 by 18 at 400 DPI, and then shrink it down for a web.
Yeah, so I'm at 6x9 inches at 600 DPI.
When I do page format adaptation, it is also same size as what you guys said, actually. But since I'm doing vertical scroll, I just do 2400 pixels wide for everything and worry about sizing for print later.
I had to double check my size. It's B4, which is like 11.5 by 16.5 inches, and then I work at 600 DPI.
Great, and then what size fonts do y'all use? From Bell.
Depends on the font, honestly.
It does. I mentioned this in the PowerPoint, but there's a book called The Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering by Blambot. He goes into really good detail about how to determine what font size, but it's basically you just got to do a print test. Every font's different. It's probably going to be between 6 point to maybe 8 point if you're working at 600 DPI. Your font will probably land in there, but you just got to physically print it out and then hold up your little print sample to like a comic that you own to just kind of eyeball it.
That is the way.
A lot of it's eyeballing. Like I had brought this up to a couple of folks in a previous panel as like a participant in the chat, but Photoshop and CSP do their sizing for fonts differently. So it's you just got to do a print test.
Yeah,
All
on
right.
Photoshop, mine is 20, I think.
All right, from Hika Tamika, question for Nero. I noticed your webcomic is hosted on a subdomain. What led you to that decision personally? I'm considering it to save some money. Any pros or cons to speak of? It's not something I've seen before and something I've read, but seeing you host your work that way gives me confidence.
I couldn't find a fun domain. I really wanted .ts, but that's like not a domain that exists. But like, so I was just like, I'll just put uv.itsnero, and it's also less characters for somebody to type out. It's just a weird situation where it ended up being more convenient. But definitely, like, if you can do it to save some money, definitely do it.
All right, question from Henrietta. Bob, what are the differences, if any, in scripting for .u? Has it changed over the years?
Yeah, so my first webcomic, Demon of the Underground, that started in 2011, and it was not meant to be a professional endeavor. And I just kind of started writing. I used to actually write it in prose and then translate it into drawing. And I would also do my notes in Excel, which was, that I gave up pretty quickly because I actually, surprisingly, I'm not an Excel enjoyer. So I know that's shocking to some of you. But yeah, now I just try to make sure that my notes are all kind of in like 1 or 2 programs so that I don't have like 20 million notes on different things where I'm forgetting where I have stuff, just having it more centralized. And I don't really do it in prose anymore because I don't need to. I used to be a prose author. Now I'm more comfortable with comics, so I just go straight.
All right. So from P-Charn, regarding automation, y'all are mentioning these rule automations. Is this something you can just look up and find out how-tos? Any quick resources would be so helpful.
Yeah, it's a lot of like Adobe programs have automations. It's an easily Googleable thing, don't worry.
In Photoshop, it's called actions. So if you Google how to do actions, that's your starting point. I've been meaning to put together one for flatting. Maybe I will someday, but yeah.
It's annoying to set up, but I promise it's so worth it.
All right. I think the blue sky post that you linked, Kody, will be helpful for the monochromatic line effect on the clip brush. So I'm going to go to You May Whistle. When you look at a new to you tool, how do you decide whether the learning curve is going to be worth the outcome of having the new tool?
Oh, that's tough. I feel like it's just like personal anecdotes. I learn about a lot of things from other members in the co-op, and if like them talking about their experience using it, it makes me go like, "What? That's possible?" I'll usually take the time to learn it.
Yeah, like a lot has to do with how much I want to murder the current tool. And like, you know, if I'm very miserable in it, then I'm more likely to try something else. If I'm like very like clean and confident in it, maybe not so much unless it looks like, you know, I will also just try things out. Like I don't use CSP a lot, but I do have it. I try it out, try a lot of things out in it. I jump around in programs. Sometimes, yeah, watch tutorials, see if it looks crazy. But yeah, that's just kind of tinker around.
Change is really difficult for me. So I've been using the same inking brush for 10 years. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Anything that's new for me, I find I'll just like dabble in something for like a minute. And like a new brush, like I have a different brush for my lettering because I wasn't finding my inking tool was doing a very good job of it. So that's usually how it works for me.
Yeah, I am also a dabbler. I used to be pretty much Photoshop exclusive when I was doing digital art. And then when CSP started getting popular, I would do kind of because I used to traditional ink, so I would kind of pencil some of my pages and then print it out and then ink over it and just kind of like get used to it. But just kind of poking around,
Yeah.
trying things out, having fun.
And I just want to read Spoopy Samuel's comment because it's like, I just love it. Spoopy Samuel, he says, "Thank you all. This whole presentation has been super informative and weirdly a huge relief for me. I always worried that a lot of my processes are weird or frowned upon because my non-comic artist friends don't work that way. And it's a huge relief to see other comic artists working the same way. And it's like, yeah, man, I love that.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
Definitely.
no, if it's getting done, there's no wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
Especially in webcomics because there are no rules here. There's no standard. There's no
No.
gatekeepers. You just this is a place where everyone gets to experiment and just do what they want.
Yeah, and I just like I love that you can see like all of our personalities are very different and all of our workflows sort of reflect that like what works best for each of us is something that we're like learning and refining over time, and it's really cool to see how differently our brains think about the same task.
Yeah. I've learned a lot today, actually.
Yeah,
Same.
It's been very, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
There will be a recording of this will go up on the YouTube channel, the Cooperative's YouTube channel, pretty much as soon as the stream ends. I think it just auto turns itself into a VOD. So
Yep.
yeah,
It's very useful.
yeah. Let's see if there's any last minute questions. I know we've got maybe 2-ish minutes. Choppy asks, how long would you guys pre-write your scripts before the actual drawing begins?
Oh, it depends.
Yeah.
I have stuff
Oh,
that's
it's
written that's like way, way far out, but I was like, this is really cool, and I've got it in my head now, so it's done. Other things, it's like the day I'm making the page is when the dialogue is getting written, or like things are getting changed, like big changes, and
yeah, like most of the things I'm drawing currently are stuff that I scripted back in like 2021. So
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
2022? Yeah.
I've ranged from 1 month to about 20 years. So
Oh my gosh.
I pretty much just go like as a chapter at a time is pretty much like the most I can wait. Like, of course, there's stuff that's off in the future that like I have kind of outlined.
Right. I
but-
want to point out though, Nero is working on like 3 different comics at every given moment
Yeah.
compared to the rest of us. Nero's a beast.
I just really like webcomics, man.
Webcomics are good.
They're so
Yeah.
good. It's the best medium.
It is. It is. And I feel like I got into it because of folks like Lacey and Nero, like looking at like Lacey's work in particular. Like that's when I was like, oh
Aw.
yeah, maybe I will go make a webcomic. Look at Lies
Yeah.
Within. Real
Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah, I think we've just about hit time, probably.
Yep, I very sadly have to cut us off a little bit here. But I
It's
mean, I
fine.
will be sending this recording to multiple people. So incredible panel. Thank you all so much. And thank everyone for attending as well.
Yeah, thank you everyone
Yeah,
in the
thank
chat.
you.
Thanks for coming.
I'm gonna put in the chat the Cartoonist Cooperative donation link as well as the Oops All Comic scene that we have.
Yeah.
Other than that, if there's any last send-offs that y'all would like to give.
Go make
Go
comics.
draw. Yeah, go make comics.
Go make comics.
Go make comics.
If you
Go
make
Do it.
make
comics, if you
Or
make
read
comics,
comics.
join the cooperative. It's great.
Yes.
Thanks so much, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.